everybody, and welcome. Today I'm going to be talking about a very special aspect of gaming. And the reason that I say that is this is essentially the opposite of the video I did a few months ago on my top 5 board gaming dislikes. So what this is a list of really core principles in different games that I really love to see. It's similar to mechanics, I guess you would say, but the thing that I always view of as mechanics are like they can potentially get lost in a larger game. So these are like really core ideas and even mindsets that you have to be thinking about when you are playing a specific game. So the way that I'm going to do this is I'm actually going to have 2 games that as examples for what I talk about, and then I'm just going to discuss what I mean. So I'm very excited to hear your guys' thoughts on this, and especially what you think about like if you have your own personal favorites, if you dislike what I say, if you like what I say, whatever it happens to be. Either way, I'm very excited to see what you have to say. So let's go ahead and get started with what I have to say with my number 5. Number 5 for me in this is essentially resource management, but in a more broad sense, just having some kind of economy. I enjoy the idea of having to trade with other players, having to try to figure out what I'm going to do, how I'm going to manage to do it, am I going to have enough money, all of those kinds of things. Power Grid does a wonderful job of this with having the market for the different things that you need to run your power plants. It means that you have to really plan a lot ahead, not only in terms of what power plants you're going to be using, but whether or not you're going to have enough money in the end to buy the resources you need to actually power everything up. On the other hand, Splendor is actually a very simple game, but it's very good. It's a wonderful game. And this is really just strict basic resource management. You have a set number of particular colors of gems, and on your turn you can take gems, or you can buy new things with the gems. Or you can do that. You can do both. But the thing is that you can only have a set number in your hand, and if they're gone, then you can't take any because there aren't any more. So it's very management centric, and really it's both of these games are heavily about economics in terms of. In the case of Power Grid, is if everybody has coal plants, coal is going to get very expensive. In the case of Splendor, if there's a lot of cards on the board that require you have amethyst, or is there amethyst? Emerald, let's say emerald, I know that's in there, then you're going to have problems catching up and getting emerald, you know, stuff like that. So they're both very good games, and I like having the ability to manipulate the inner workings of the game's economy. Both of these have it as a very core principle. Other games do it as well, but you could say something like Twilight Imperium, Eclipse, and things like that. They do have economies in them. The problem is that that's what I was talking about with like getting lost. There's so much other stuff going on that the economics aspect doesn't matter as much. It still matters, but not as much as in games like this. So either way, narrowly speaking, resource management, but more broadly speaking, an economy within the game is my number 5. Number 4 is probably something that won't come as too much of a surprise for most of you if you've seen my videos before, but it is cooperativeness. It's a co-op mechanic. Anytime that you have cooperation as a core mechanic in a game or a core principle of a game, it's something that I tend to enjoy a lot more. And there's actually a couple of different reasons for it. First and foremost is it's much easier to have non-gamer people play a cooperative game, simply because a lot of people are uncomfortable with competitiveness. And the second thing is that more often than not, even if it doesn't say you can really play any cooperative game solo, because you are literally playing against the game. So for example, these two that I have here, Robinson Crusoe and Ghost Stories, both actually have mechanics specific, or rules that are specific for solo. Obviously, there are a ton of cooperative games, and many of them are great, and a lot of them actually have great solo mechanics. For example, Pandemic, with the In the Lab expansion, you get a solo mechanic with that. With Arkham Horror, you have solo rules. The Walking Dead, same thing. I mean, I could go on and on and on about all of these. But cooperation is a great thing to see in gaming, simply because it makes for a more friendly environment overall. I think that it's something that it lets you not think quite as much, because it's essentially like you're using 4 brains instead of 1, and it just makes things a little bit easier on the players. And on top of that, it means that there's a lot less animosity around the table compared to if you're doing something like Twilight Imperium, because then everybody's going to be at each other's throats, and it can get very ugly, or at least rather unpleasant. So regardless, cooperation, just co-op games in general, is my number 4 core principle that I like to see in games. Number 3, I have a core principle that I don't only enjoy in board gamings, but that I absolutely love to do in real life as well, and that is negotiation. Negotiation is a great thing to see in board gamings. I love to have table talk between players. I love to see that. I love to have alliances. I love to potentially, I don't normally do it, to potentially break those alliances and stab your partners in the back, all of those great things. These two games are good examples of those. Cosmic Encounter, my favorite game of all time, is very heavily negotiation based, because a lot of the aspects relate to alliances, who you're going to help out, who you're not going to help out. Whereas Article 27, the whole point is that you are playing as the UN Security Council. So negotiation is the entirety of the game, basically. But this game is really cool. You have mechanics ranging from you're able to bribe people to the whole point is that you're trying to get your particular agendas through, so you have to negotiate with them, and my favorite mechanic just happens to be the bribe with that. But either way, both of these games have negotiation really at their core, and a lot of other games do as well. There's things like I had just thought of one, and now I forgot what it was. I'll probably remember in a little bit. But either way, I love negotiating in games. I love negotiating in real life as well. It's something that I enjoy doing. I like having my brain think like that. I like being able to think that I'm winning at real life type of thing. It's really cool, and it's just a fun thing. Eclipse. That was one of them, at least. But there's a huge number of negotiation games. Now, one thing is that not all games that have negotiation are solely negotiation games. Negotiation is something that tends to be more of like an offset aspect. So, for example, Game of Thrones. It's a great game, very heavily strategic. There's a lot of stuff going on, though. And negotiation, like using the alliance token, is very important with regard to who can potentially win fights. And that's really where the negotiation comes into play, but at the same time, compared to a lot of other aspects, it's relatively minor. So that's why I picked these two games as the examples, but I really just enjoy the table talk that negotiation in a game gives you, and in particular, I like the way that these two games handle being able to negotiate. So that is why the collective idea of core principle of negotiation is my number 3. Before before I get started with my number 2, I'm going to say right off the bat that these two are really sort of inexorably linked with one another in some way or another. A lot of games that use my number 1 aspect also have the second one, and but not necessarily in the opposite way. I'll show you what I mean in just a little bit, and that's why it's not on the table right now. So the game for number 2 is Alchemists. One thing I love to do, just like with negotiation, I love to do this in real life as well, I am a scientist, is I love deduction. I love reasoning, I love logic, and that is exactly what Alchemists is. That is the entire point of Alchemists, is that you are trying to deduce what specific things are. You have deduction in a ton of different games. You have it in games like Shadows over Camelot, Battlestar Galactica, Letters from Whitechapel, just any of those like sort of like trader co-op type games, anything of that nature. And in a lot of different games you have some form of deduction, but not to the extent that Alchemists have. And it's one of the reasons why I love this game so much, because it just really speaks to me, since I do work in science, that this is what we do. Like the whole point is that we do experiments to test hypotheses, and then we can determine whether we are supported or not supported, and we are deducing based on evidence. That's the entire point, and that's the whole point of this game. It's great. I just love the idea of logic, and things like Blocus, I guess, is a really good example of more so logic than deduction, but just, you know, trying to figure out the best way to put pieces, similar to Tetris if you guys haven't played it, but it's a really interesting little game. There's a lot of sort of spatial games like that work, that are really cool, but again, like deduction and logic, things of that nature, is something that I really, really enjoy, and like I said, is really inexorably linked to my number 1, which I'm going to get to right now after I say deduction games are my number 2. And here we are at number 1. My favorite core principle of gaming that I love to see all the time is deception. I mentioned with the when I talked about my number 2 version, or my number 2 choice, which is deduction, that these two are really inexorably linked. And that's exactly right. Where if you have deception of some sort, then more than likely you're going to have to do some deducting. Or some deducing. I'm sorry, you don't have to deduct anything, but you have to deduce. So, for example, I mentioned several things where I said the Shadows over Camelot, Battlestar Galactica, Letters from Whitechapel. What do all those have in common? The whole point is that they are cooperative games that have a traitor element, and the idea, in part, is to figure out who the traitor is. Same thing with well, I've got the Resistance here, very similar to this, is Werewolf. The whole point is that you're trying to hide the fact that you're a werewolf. But these two games are really, really, not only are they great games in general, but they are excellent examples of being able to perform deception, and on top of that, you are deceiving people without a lot of other stuff. So I mentioned again cooperative games with traitor elements. In that case, the treacherous aspect is something that not only do you deal with later in the game, but it might not even be there, and there is so much other stuff going on. Whereas for these two games, and also for something like Werewolf, it is superbly core to the game itself. For example, in Resistance, the whole point is that you've got good guys and you've got spies. The whole point is that you don't know who anybody else is, and you're trying to figure out who the spies are based on going on these missions. It's a wonderful game. It is so much fun. And the thing is, every single time I play this, it turns into just like, no, you're a spy. No, you're a spy. Oh, you're a spy. Everybody's a spy. It's just insane, but it is so much fun. It's absolutely incredible because it just puts people in that mindset of, oh my god, everybody is lying to me and I just know it. I just have to figure out why. You know, just things like that. And it just really makes you think about that. The Resistance does it a little bit better than Sheriff of Nottingham does. And incidentally, I am very excited. I just recently got this. I'm so happy. I'm very excited that I got this. So the idea behind Sheriff of Nottingham is it's very similar to the card game BS. I'm not going to say the actual name, but the whole point is that you put your stuff in a little bag and you say, I have 4 apples, or whatever it happens to be, and then the sheriff determines whether or not you're telling the truth and either inspects your bag to see if you were lying or gives it back to you. You've got things like contraband, but then you also have, you can just lie about what it actually is, just because why not? Whatever it happens to be. Whoever is wrong has to pay the other person like a fine, a fee. And it's just really, really fun. It's a great game and a terrific, again, a wonderful example of how deception can be very fluidly integrated into a game and not really have a whole lot of other stuff. A large portion of this game is solely based around deception. It is a wonderful mechanic. I really love to see it. I don't know if that makes me a bad person, but I always find it really fun. Deception is my #1 core principle to see in board games. So that's it for me, everybody. Thank you very, very much for watching this really interesting video on board gaming. I am very anxious to see what you guys say about this. Like I said at the very beginning, I know that this is an extremely broad thing to talk about, and I'm hoping that it fosters a lot of really good discussion about all sorts of different things. But my idea is just, what are your favorite core principles of games to see? I mean, it can even be a mechanic. Do you really like worker placement? Do you really like deck building games? Whatever it happens to be, I really want to hear about it. And more importantly, why? Why do you like that so much? So for me, I love the deduction and I love the deception. It's just such a fun combination, and it always makes for wonderful game nights, especially with my group, at least. But either way, very, very fun. I am very excited to see what you guys have to say. Thank you so much, as always, for watching, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much again for watching this video of my top 5 favorite core principles in board games. As I mentioned earlier, I know this is a massively subjective area, so I am very anxious to see what you all have to say. Please put any and all thoughts and comments below. I want to see things where you agree with me, you disagree with me, whatever your personal favorites are, whatever they happen to be. As always, I've got several videos linked up at the top of the page for you to check out, and if you liked what you see here, go ahead and click that big giant subscribe button so that you can see more from me in the future. Thanks again very much, and I will see you next time.